Is it really true that most Black people can't swim? Is there any historical reasons as to why Black people are less likely to know how to swim? Well, a filmmaker who has won an Emmy and has produced an amazing documentary from out of Miami, Florida, joins me tonight. She's going to talk about her film called Wade in the Water, Drowning in Racism. One thing I'm really interested to know is what she discovered through her work about the situation in Miami as it pertains to the civil rights era and what policies influenced how active or non active African Americans were at beaches and pools. If you're watching from around the world, I invite you to hit the like button and welcome. This is the Suzette Speaks show. I'm really excited to have each and every one of you. If you're watching Team Replay, you know what to do. Hit the like button as well. If you've watched this channel before, you know that I'm very passionate about social justice and equality. And I'm always curious about the legal aspects of what makes our country what it's like today. Oftentimes, we live in a climate where people want to rewrite history and try to ignore some of the policies that were even instituted by our local government, state government, and national government that help to form what is a divided society in many ways. Oftentimes, we look at the state of economics, we look at the state of career and job opportunities and elevations, and we wonder why is there such a disparity at times between our African American segments of the population and our white brothers and sisters. Well, tonight we're going to explore a different angle of that, and it's going to be with swimming. If you know how to swim, I'm so sorry I categorized you incorrectly. If you happen to be African American and watching this, if you're watching from around the world, you may not know some of this history. So pull up a chair. It's going to be educational experience for me as well. But I always like to sit back and kind of let my guests tell their dynamic stories. And Miss Cathleen Dean, through her work as a filmmaker, director, photographer, and several other projects in real life, like I know her in real life that she does, has made me quite the fan. And in full disclosure, I know Cathleen. So I'm going to get to know her on a different level. But please, before I do, and before I can bring her up, hit the like button. If you're watching on Facebook, welcome. If you're watching on the Suzette Speak Show on YouTube, you know what to do. Hit the like button, show some love, and let me know where you're watching from. Thank you so much for those already saying, hey, in the chat. What's up, RM? One of the best moderators in these YouTube streets. RM also has a channel. Y'all, please go support. Thank you so much for being here and for moderating for me. And if you're ghost watching, I see you. Come on through, hit the like button. Let's get into the conversation. So without further ado, I would like to bring up Miss Emmy award-winning. Can I do it tonight? Let me sip some water. Emmy award-winning filmmaker extraordinaire, just so multi-talented. I can't wait to peel back the layers of her talent and work. So welcome for the first time to the Suzette Speak Show here on YouTube, Miss Cathleen Dean. Welcome, Cathleen. How are you?
Hello, Suzette. Thank you. I'm doing great. Happy to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm so excited, girl. You got me a little dressed up and stuff. I was like, let me step my game up. I saw your beautiful floral. We are Miami ladies, so it's a South Florida takeover tonight. What's up? Everybody let me know where you're watching from. Put your location in the chat. But I'm really excited to have you. There's so much about this new documentary I want to discuss. And again, she can be found in the film. Uh-oh, I got your name. Hold on. Let me rewrite it. We got typos in there. I had your last name. Let's see it there. I want you to go look her up on Instagram. She also has a Facebook page. The film is out. We got to discuss some historical, sometimes uncomfortable truths in our discourse about this great nation. And I think sometimes, again, people don't want to look back. People get nervous when they look back. There's just shame. There's a fear of what I believe, this might lead to. But I applaud you for doing this work. So before we get deep, let's first have you introduce yourself. Tell the folks watching about what you do.
Wow. So I'm Cathleen Dean, originally from New York, but I've been here in South Florida for over 20 years now. I'm a filmmaker, a photographer, and I'm also the executive director of arts and theater performance for a brand new theater in Fort Lauderdale called the Victory Black Box Theater, which is located at the LA Lee YMCA Mizell Community Center in the heart of historic Black Sistrunk. So that's a little bit about what I do. I'm a mother, a friend, an artist, an advocate. Um, yeah, that's
Yeah,
me.
so I'm excited that you have that background. I'm here googling and looking up productions coming up at that theater. And if you guys watched Merchants of Venice, we had a show with Darius Daughtry not too long ago. You were involved in that production. Tell us real quick what your role was.
Well, I'm the executive director, so I oversee that facility, and I had crafted a partnership with the producer of the show,
Mhm.
Claire Vickery, and Claire and I had been talking for months before the production came together, and kind of connected her to Darius and some other people, and then just provided the space for that amazing performance and all that.
Yay, it was amazing. I went to see it. I brought the family, my mom, my little cousins that were uh what 16, 9, and maybe 5. That was their first time
Oh
seeing a
wow.
play. I was so proud. They were confused. I think the Shakespeare might have been too heavy for them. However, I think just having gone and now they can say I've been to a play, and maybe I can take them to one more age appropriate in the future. But excellent job to you and all the rest of the producers, casts, everyone who was involved in kind of the telling of the Merchants of Venice as if it were set in Miami in the 1940s, I believe. It was really interesting. So you also have, and I want to mention because this is how I think a lot of people in South Florida know you, a project called the 48-hour
Film
film
project.
project. Can you tell us what that is about?
Yes. So I have been producing the 48-hour film project in South Florida for for a while now. It's the oldest time film competition in the world, and it's sort of an annual event for local filmmakers to come together and make a movie, a short movie in 2 days. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of stress, but it has great results. And each year we get like films that really like knock everybody away. They're so creative. It's amazing what people can come up with in 2 days.
Wow. So they have to start to finish, create films only within that 48 hours and submit them. That's amazing. Shoot and produce everything in that 48 hours. And I think people will be surprised. Hello in the chat. Hey, Jets Neetram. Hey, Miss AKA Lady. I see you, darling. Thank you so much. You guys hit the like button as you were coming in. I'm
Hey,
excited to,
everybody.
yes, they talk back to me. I call my community speakers over
Oh, nice.
4,000 strong. I'm so grateful for each and every one of them, just liking what I have to offer in terms of just good conversation and hopefully a little edutainment on these YouTube streets. But talking to Cathleen Dean today, she's a filmmaker and director of a brand new film, and I want to get into this documentary. So tell us a little bit about how you came to conceptualize, even what was the interest in doing a documentary about the history of segregated swimming pools and beaches in Miami.
Well, I get it started with my love for the water. I was working out a couple of years ago, and I wanted to do a triathlon. So I was like, I need to work on my swimming. I'm a swimmer, but I needed to be a little better swimmer in order to participate in a triathlon. So a friend connected me with Thaddeus Gamery,
Mhm.
who is the leader of diversity in aquatics, local chapter in a swim club. Sorry, somebody is blowing up my phone. It
Tell them you
never
got a YouTube
fails.
interview. You can't be calling her right now. Of course,
Right? I'm
never
on
fails.
CZ don't they know? Um, yeah, so I wanted to work on my swimming, so I joined the Diversity and Aquatics Swim Club, and started working out with Thaddeus. He has an adult master's swim program there, and also an adult learn to swim program. Thaddeus knew I was a filmmaker, so he asked me to accompany him to the International Swimming Hall of Fame for a ceremony that was
Mm.
going to acknowledge a little boy had saved a little girl from drowning. So I went to document the ceremony, And at the International Swimming Hall of Fame in Fort Lauderdale, I was introduced to Bruce Wygo, who was the executive director at the time. And he took me on a tour of an art gallery that he had there at the Hall of Fame. And it blew me away. The art chronicled the history of Africans in swimming.
Mm,
And it was there I learned of the rich and amazing history that people of the African descent had with the water from the beginning of time. You know,
mm.
they were pearl divers and fishermen and had a water culture, and it was a huge part of, you know, who they were. I learned that the Africans had taught the Europeans how to swim,
Hold
and
up,
it's
hold up,
kind of
hold up,
blew
hold
me
up.
away.
You talking about America? You talking about pre? What we talking about?
Yes, yes.
Pre-colonial? What we
See,
talking
you
about?
And you mentioned in the introduction something I thought was very important, that a lot of times we don't want to look back because of shame and other negative things. But also when we look back, we get clarity, we get understanding, we find truth, we find history.
Absolutely.
And that's what I found when Bruce took me on that journey to look back.
This
And
is
then
so interesting. So I just to again emphasize. So you're saying when we're talking about colonial times that Black people had already been
I'm
in the
talking
water.
prior to colonial times, Black people had lived near the water. They had communities around the water. They had aquatic culture.
Wow. See, no one will tell this story because again, I'm watching right now, Kathleen. I'll just tell you what's on my Netflix. I'm really into like Viking stories, history of ancient Europe right now. That's a phase I'm in. So I've been watching what's this show called The Last Kingdom. It's so old, but it's new to me. I'm one of these people that discover shows late. But I'm actually I love when I watch films and then I can Google to see who the real people were around that time that they kind of use as muses and somewhat of example for how they describe what was going on at the time. But a lot of these shipmen, the Vikings that came from the Scandinavian countries, did not know how to swim. It was the ocean was scary. It was almost certain death. Like you had to have these mythologies in and around, you know, these sirens and other things, so that men could explain the fear and explain, you know, why it was this almost fearful and treacherous as oceans were when you had no, you know, pre-navigational knowledge, especially in Europe. I know we had it in Africa in different places already. Some even believe that Africans circumnavigated the globe prior to even not only Europeans, but maybe even Chinese. So I know there's a lot of history around this that sometimes we're not oftentimes, let's say sometimes, oftentimes gets left out. Like,
Yeah.
oh, Black people can't swim is like where we start, right? We start right in this present narrative. So before we get into the current narrative, so all of this history kind of you were researching just for your own understanding and your love for the water, and you're getting ready for this triathlon.
Yeah, I was exposed to the history, and you know, there are historical accounts of from Europeans when they first, you know, landed on the shores of Africa, describing how amazing the African swimmers were. So you know, I dove in, you know, once I learned this history, and then I was looking through the archives, the Wolfson archives, and I found all this amazing historical footage of the protests that took place in the 1960s in Fort Lauderdale to desegregate the beaches and the swimming pools. And I was just like, I have to marry this. I have this material. I know the story. I want to put it together and share it.
That's amazing. So a lot of time between those two histories. And again, what people learn is what they I would say what they are taught. I want to say what people teach you limits what you know. So if we're reliant on our school systems and other places, I was just watching a show that was talking about how many more kids are homeschooled, and of that number of newly homeschooled since the pandemic, uh, a high majority are now Black students, Black children of school age. That people are deciding again, what kind of education am I getting? I don't want my child, my son, my daughter's spirit to be broken when they enter the public school system. I'm going to try this thing called homeschooling. And I think the numbers went from under a million in the last couple of years to like almost 5 million children are homeschooled now in the United States of America, which is a huge shift. So thinking about
If I had it to do all over again, I
you
would
would
definitely
homeschool. I'm
without.
thinking about it. Like, I ain't got no kids, but I'm thinking about. I'm like, if my husband allow, I could probably do it. But thinking about that history and this rich history that is not told about Black people and water, Black people being able to swim, Black people um, at peace with the ocean, because I saw this comment. I was waiting to read it. Thank you so much, everybody in the chat. Hello, and thank you for watching. I saw this by Jet Sneetram when he says psychic trauma from the Middle Passage is a huge and very deep statement. So for those of you guys who don't know what the Middle Passage is, that is the time in which Africans were stolen, taken, however you want to describe it, from parts of West Africa, even beyond, because I've watched Henry Louis Gates talk about
Okay.
where we're from. And a lot of us were from Madagascar and our Malagasy and other parts of around the southern tip of Africa. But nonetheless, when we think about this Middle Passage, when Africans were taken and made into slaves, we weren't slaves. We were made. We were human beings made into enslaved human beings. So I always check my language. And we're not slaves. We're Africans who were enslaved. So when we think about that passage and the triangle trade, I had my all my slides I wanted to use tonight. But in the triangle trade, where Africans were taken to the Caribbean, most likely Jamaica, hello, or Brazil. In South America, over 1 million Africans were taken to Mexico. People don't realize that. Up through Virginia, people were taken from their families, their homelands, and brought to the West. And crossing the Atlantic was called the Middle Passage. So I do agree with you, Jet Sneetram, that this fear of water, or this disdain for being near, close to, learning to enjoy water, it can have psychological roots to this Middle Passage. What would you think about that statement, Kathleen?
I think there probably definitely is some truth to that statement. What I learned in my research was that the separation from the water came, during the colonial times. It came during Jim Crow segregation. It came when those the lands next to the waters here in America were coveted by white people. So they
Mm-hmm.
began to push Black people away and deny them access to the water. So we have generations who grew up, in this country, who were not allowed on the beach. So, in families who don't know how to swim, how do you protect your children? You tell them to stay away from the water. So that becomes the culture, the new culture,
Mm.
the
Very
safety.
deep. Let me digest that. Filmmaker and director Cathleen Dean tonight, y'all, doing work, talking about her new film, because I do think when I think about my legal education, we had something that was called riparian. I know that's a big word, y'all, but water rights. And yes, in those early days of United States, land that had water running through it was super valuable. People didn't have pipes under their house. The brook was where you bathed, you drank from, you had all your crops watered from. So any type of water access, riparian is what we call it, rights, were coveted in a way, and desirous in a way that keeping others away from that, I could understand that just from that legal aspect of how important it was to even write about those. If the water starts on your land, there's laws about that we're not being able to put up like a dam or anything like that. Like, you have to take care of all the people that it runs through, depending on your state. But yeah, so imagining that principle kind of developing into a culture where Black people now say, water is dangerous. We are no longer communing with water the way, especially in many of our West African cultures, water is a part of our ceremonies. Water is a part of, just a spiritual connection, to now not having access to water, being afraid of it, and being taught to be afraid of it through this kind of separation due to our colonial past. It's very interesting. What else did you find when you were researching?
Well, I found, that the myths and the stereotypes that Black people don't swim are false, right? So we had accomplished swimmers, and even now we have Olympic swimmers, and it's just a matter of like changing the culture to kind of get the community to commune with the water again. And like you said, it's part of our culture. We had a spiritual, historical, cultural connection to the water, and it's really important to reconnect for so many reasons, not just for drowning prevention and water safety, but for health and wellness and joy and relaxation. There's so
Absolutely. I'm grateful because I feel like, especially in some communities as well, where we're talking about the African diaspora, drinking water. Let's go. I know we're in a very health conscious, especially if you're calling yourself middle class. You are definitely more health conscious when it comes to water intake, and all those things that we're talking about. I see you guys in the chat. Thank y'all for coming over. Appreciate everyone watching. Hit the like button. Why don't you? Last, good man in Jersey keeps it simple and plain. What's good, Suzette? Parents, it's your job to teach your kids how to swim. Let's go. Miss AKA Lady, thank you for being here. Swimming lessons are expensive. I pay over $200. I remember I went one summer. That was it. How I swim now, thank God, is for that one summer my mom invested or was able to. I hear you, sis. For 2 kids, wow, it's not a budget-friendly activity, which creates another obstacle to water preparedness. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about why we as a race as well are often more susceptible to drowning because of this culture we're talking about. I've interviewed people here in Miami before for shows that started foundations. Their kids drown in like almost, a few inches of water and things like this because nobody in the family, could help them A, or could swim B, depending on the circumstances. But thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. They panic and people don't know what to do. What's up, DL Saint in the building? Good to have you, brother. Says hello. What's good? Salute to the chat. All right, now. Synonis says, I don't buy slavery as the reason Black people stereotypically don't swim. You don't buy it? I don't know. You mean as in the transition to the new world that we're talking about and the evil that took place on those open seas where people were tossed overboard, people jumped overboard, people who were dead or dying were discarded. There are several countries now with statues and which I say works of art that are below water that show this painful history of those folks who decided, in the words of what Black Panther, throw me to the sea. I don't want to go in a new world where I have to be subjugated and abused and enslaved. So I hear you, and we can have a difference of opinion.
And I kind of agree. I think it was more the systemic separation that took place once, we were here, denying, Black people access to the waterways was what
Yes.
prevented us from continuing that culture.
I think we gotta watch the film, but I hear you.
Yes, me
Honest
too.
says it's more linked to economic reasons. Okay, I hear you. Now also same thing. I want to talk about this civil rights era because the '60s were the birth of this kind of which I say word I'm looking for is resistance. This resistance to this I can't now. I know places in Fort Lauderdale, on Miami. When we look at Virginia Key in Miami, the traditional Black beach, when we talk about the traditional Black beach in Fort Lauderdale, there's so much history that people don't know. And I want you to try to explain some of what you cover in the documentary as to what it was like and what was that period like, specifically in the 60s when people were having wait-ins. Talk about what you share in the film about that era.
Sure. So what a lot of people don't know is that, prior to the civil rights legislation, Black people were not allowed on the beach. You had to have an ID card that said you were working for some white person in order to get access to go to the beach.
Can I just pause you there? And what we're talking about is what y'all love, South Beach, where is a part of Miami Beach. You had to have a card, a pass to cross, and Miami Beach is connected to the mainland through a causeway. It's like a barrier island. So in order to cross the causeway as a Black person for decades, you had to have a pass, literally a card to show, as Kathleen is describing, that you had work there. You had business. Black people could not go to South Beach, could not go to Miami Beach without this pass. So I just want to emphasize that because I think people hear this and it kind of like, oh, you had to have a card to go to. No, you were not allowed. Don't come across the bridge, as we say in Miami. It's a different world across the bridge. But I just want people to understand really what that meant. Please keep
Thank
going.
you for emphasizing that. Yeah, we were not allowed across for any other reason but to work. So in 1961, it was July 4th, 1961, Eula Johnson and Dr. Bondi Mizell organized a protest at Fort Lauderdale Beach. So in the 60s, there was a movie that came out, Where the Boys Are, and it sort of started the whole spring break culture, and
In Fort
tourism
Lauderdale.
started. Yeah, Fort Lauderdale started to develop, as a tourism, and the government identified money coming into the state from vacationers, people wanting to be there for spring break. And so when this protest took out, they were like, okay, this is going to mess with our money. We've got to do something quickly. A lawsuit was filed and the city settled. They said, well, we'll designate a black beach. So we'll keep Fort Lauderdale Beach white and we'll give the black people another beach that they can go to. And that beach is
Was
located
Brandon?
in Dania. I'm talking, this is
Okay.
Howard County. So it
Broward County,
was,
sorry, Fort Lauderdale side. Credit, I'm thinking Miami side. So
yeah,
for Lauderdale side was Dania Beach. Oh wow.
it was Dania Beach. It was originally called the John U. Lloyd State Park.
Ah.
And I think it was about 6 years ago, it was renamed after the civil rights activists, Dr. Bondi Mizell and Eula Johnson Clark, who fought for access to that beach.
Let me pause you because this is such great information. And thank you so much, everybody in the chat. Wizard Kelly says, the greatest impediment to our advancement as a race is the family structure. From network to education to mass incarceration, there is one variable that is most deterministic. I appreciate your feedback. Miss AKA Lady adds, I think every Florida town has segregated stories. Yes, as late as the 80s, Blacks were shunned from certain beaches on the Panhandle. Thanks, sis, for letting us know what's going on in those areas, especially as we get into deeper south in terms of their culture. Panhandle cities are closer to Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and getting into more segregated and sundown laws. So just to do a quick reset, welcome everybody. Hit the like button, why don't you? We're talking about why can't Black people swim? The history of desegregation in the pools and the beaches in South Florida. I'm with filmmaker and a photographer and executive producer and so many other things, Cathleen Dean. She's a Miami girl, proud to know her, and glad she has put out this brand new documentary talking about this history. So we're going down memory lane in terms of what happened in Fort Lauderdale. I didn't even realize. I remember the renaming. I remember it was a big deal when the Florida legislature changed John U. Lloyd. Now, people didn't realize who John U. Lloyd was. John U. Lloyd was a local, I think, Broward County official who practiced openly segregation. And he was the namesake of the Black Beach. I'm like, how?
Because he filed the paperwork.
Oh, that's how he got the name? It's like,
filed the paperwork.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, this is the biggest slap in the face. Like, I remember as a kid, John U. Lloyd, John U. Lloyd. That is a very common, field trip area where people go with their school. We did beach cleanups at John U. Lloyd. It was all kinds of stuff always there. I had no idea in Fort Lauderdale that was the historically Black beach. So as she said, it was renamed for these folks who desegregated it with what they call wade-ins. Explain what a wade-in is for people who don't know.
So a wade-in is, and I think the wade-ins are protests. They're organized protests that took place at beaches and pools, throughout the South. Most people are very familiar with sit-ins, how we organized and we said the civil rights activists sat in at lunch counters. Wade-ins actually started before the sit-ins. It started way back as early as the 50s in the beaches in the South.
So coming to the shoreline, to a beach you were not supposed to be at. It was the white, quote unquote, only beach, and coming through and saying, nope, we are going to go into the water, this sacred white only side, and show everybody, hey, we could be at the beach together. Guess what? The water is not, any worse off. We're not contaminating anything. We're human beings just like you. Look at this. And it was a big deal. Talk about police presence. And again, it wasn't just, oh, go in the water and splash. It was people running them down, telling them to get the out of here. It was being berated. It was being arrested. Law enforcement was on the scene. It was a big scene. I've done a little research on some of these wait-ins from even before now, seeing what people had to do in a place where we take water for granted in South Florida, because we're like 2 miles from it, or 5 miles from it, or less than 10 if you even live out west. So knowing that that was fought for, I think is a super important part of our history to tell, because we go to the beach now, we on South Beach partying, and it's like, no, your grandma, even some of you, your mom, could not have gone freely across the bridge to Miami Beach. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Well, and it wasn't just the beaches, it was also the swimming pools.
Talk
I
about that.
just I just took part in an art exhibition called Pool that was about the history of segregation around pools,
Mm,
because white people didn't want to swim with black people in pools all over the country.
mm.
And they had something called International Day. So the white people would get to swim in the pools for, 6 days. And then just before they were ready to clean the pool, on the last day when it was
Yeah.
really dirty, they would call that International Day. And they would let the black people come in and swim one day. So it was
Wow.
really,
I've seen pictures of people throwing acid in pools after people, trying to get black kids to get out of the white pool. It was a horrific and terrorizing time in our country. And we're talking about the 60s, correct?
yes, we're talking about the 60s.
So,
That incident that you mentioned, with the acid in the swimming pool, that's featured in my film, and it took place in St. Augustine.
mm,
Um, it that really was a game changer, for the civil rights movement.
it's scary to think about. And again, follow Cathleen Dean on all social media, y'all. She's on Facebook, she's on Instagram. Go to CathleenDean.com. There's so much more to her story. Like I said, she has her hand in so many projects. We're going to cover as many as we can tonight, but particularly this project, Wade in the Water, a new documentary that she has uh, given to us. And I'm going to get the second half, Drowning in Racism. Wade in the Water, Drowning in Racism, where she takes a deep dive into Florida's fight for the right to swim. The film brings to life the 1960s civil rights protests that desegregated the state's swimming pools and beaches. It's a very, very important history to tell. So as you started doing the documentary, did you cry? Did you have an emotional reaction, or what did you feel this? I know, like, again, when I read some things from the past, I'd be like, oh Lord, God, thank you for letting me be alive now, because I don't know how strong I would have been. Would I have been as strong as the ancestors who lived this?
No,
What were you feeling internally?
as an artist, no, I didn't cry. And as an artist, I was very intentional about the story I wanted to tell. I
Mm,
wanted to tell a story that had some difficult, subjects in there to kind of convey to everybody, but I wanted to do it in a way where, it emphasized, the joy and the history and the proud past that we had as a people. So I hope to create, a film that left everybody feeling, empowered, joyful, ready to take action, ready to, learn how to swim if they were not swimmers, ready to help, children learn. One of your, listeners,
mhm.
mentioned the cost of swimming lessons. And yeah, it can be very expensive, but there are ways that we can all help. We could sponsor children to take lessons. The
There are
YMCA has
organizations that pay for lessons too in Miami. I know of a couple. Yeah.
There are, and United Way, the YMCA has they call it Swim for Jenny, and it's a week during the year where they offer free swim lessons. So, that's what, I wanted to create this film to not make anybody cry. I wanted to empower people, to dispel the negative myths and the stereotypes that Black people don't swim, and to encourage more people of color to reconnect with the water. And I'm hoping
It's
it does.
so deep, Kathleen, because I'm in my heart. I was like, wow. I'm glad you said that your intention. Hey, Ace B. And yes, as funny, Miss AKA Lady says, our Black beach and the Panhandle was named after a white guy, too. There
Uh,
was, again, people don't like to think of systemic racism as a problem that still exists today or has impact today. But when we sometimes open these pages in history, the real history of the United States, it can hurt. It can be difficult to tell the story. And I'm glad you said that you have made this with an intention of bringing an angle of joy and encouragement and excitement about this is who we are. Don't let what is the present day narrative kind of destroy who our people were when it came to the water way before. Again, our history does not begin in slavery, and a lot of people, we were just constantly fed that. I want to ask you, let me sidebar a little bit, how you feel about some of the movies that come out. I know there's a new movie coming out for Emmett Till. I know Will Smith has a movie that's supposed to come out about the a slave during, I think, the Civil War times. I don't know how much more sad slave narratives I can take, because as a child, I was taught this by my parents. I read in the what should I call it? Southern. It's not even Southern. It's a African American dialect of English, AADEE or something like this. I've read the poems. I've read some of the writings. Thank God for teachers that actually taught history when I was growing up, and opened me up to so many of the ways in which the American experience was not just sad. Horrific things took place during slavery.
So I
Abuse of the body, abuse of the mind, abuse of children, abuse, just the conditioning that one was less than for centuries, right? But I don't know how I can digest and not crumble to hear more and more of the horrific side of it. And I know it has to be told. So what are your takes on like some of these movies now that
my
we've gotten like a barrage of?
I saw Till this past weekend, and I would encourage everybody to see it. It
Mm,
was the story, everyone knows the story of Emmett Till. It was a horrific crime against this child, but they emphasize the courage of his mother. It's
okay.
such a beautiful story, her resilience, and the fact that she wanted people to know what happened to her child, and her taking that stand, really made a difference for everyone.
Mm.
So I
So it's not a hard like, oh my gosh, I can't see more violence against black bodies type movie.
no, because there was nothing gratuitous in this
Good.
movie. It was a
Yes.
really well
Yes.
done, inspiring film.
Thank you for saying that.
I
Ooh.
encourage everybody to go
I'm
see it.
gonna see it, Kathleen. Ace says the same thing. Ace B was like, I stopped watching those quote unquote black films for the sake of my mental health. Honestly, when after watching like 12 Years a Slave,
That was a tough one.
I had nightmares, like literally thinking like what it must have been like if I were black and alive at that time. And for people to have freedom and be stolen and taken back to the South and all this, I was just like, it's a lot mentally. It's a lot mentally. I weep for them, my ancestors, often when I think about, wow, the woman I am, they dreamt about, or they couldn't even, some may have not been able to picture it because of the constant, dehumanizing conditions in our country. So I think about this in a lot of ways. I'm glad you're saying that your film is uplifting, yay, and so is Till and others. So
So
you think, so
And
do
then
you,
there's another film
yeah,
I'm gonna recommend since we're talking about films, and I love
yes.
someone sent this to me, The Descendant. It's on
Mm.
Netflix, and it's the story of the Catilda, which is the last,
Oh, the Clotilda, yeah, the last slave
Catilda.
ship that hit our shores in the United States. Yes.
Yeah, an amazing story. Like, I
Wow.
didn't know anything about the story of Africa Town and
Hmm.
Catilda, so I would recommend everyone go watch that too.
Yay, I read about it. Clotilda. I don't want to give it away. Yes, Sinonis, I agree with you. Black people have more stories than slavery and suffering. Hallelujah. I want us to be resilient. Like even how they depict women and men's relationships. We have loving relationships, and we're constantly being shown that black women don't like black men and we're saucy and we can't be told what to do, and black men are always doing this wrong. How are we going to learn to trust and love one another if the narrative already is being kind of like conditioned inside you that we can't be together. So I agree with you. The suffering kind of hurts me. It needs to be told for historical reference. I know we won't stop telling, stories of World War II and the Holocaust and other places in history that had horrific, the Armenian genocide, all these things in which, it's so much hurt and suffering. But I know we have to make a mark in terms of don't let people forget, because we doing crazy stuff right now that make you wonder. Yes, I agree with you, HB. Hollywood doesn't want to share stories about Black people who are empowered and resilient. I hear you. There's a reason for this. Hello. Some might say there's too much conspiracy in that statement, but I don't think so. There's a lot of people who benefits if there's no Black community. If the Black community is fractured, if there's no marriages and no kids being raised in a way that makes them fully confident, fully capable, access to much more economic resources, more healthy, more this, more that, let the list go on. But yeah, it's very interesting how our narratives, our art contribute to who we actually become. The first time you see a person do X, Y, Z on the screen, you're like, whoa, I can do that. We know representation matters. We know it builds the unfortunate and sometimes fortunate stereotypes of who are the winners, who are the good people, who are the losers, who are the people that you have to be careful of, and that kind of thing. So we got to be very careful what we ingest and what we support. But I agree that some of these stories have to be told, though. Whether we take it in every day, I got to take breaks. 6 months later, taking another one. But I know for me, I have a sensitive spirit. So when I see certain things on violence wise, I'm like, nah.
Yeah.
So we're getting into Kathleen's film. We are talking about the wade-ins, which were protests at beaches and pools where people during the 60s came through. It was like, all right, we're going to come into this water. So what did you discover? What was it like watching some of that footage, reading some of those articles? Tell us more about what it is that really struck you about that period.
Well, for one, I love the fact that Eula Johnson was a leader, that she was a strong Black woman, taking charge, organizing, speaking her mind, and leading young people and other people to the beach to protest. So I was inspired by her story.
Mm. So yeah, and a woman at that time was, again, it was unheard of. We were at the March on Washington, and we weren't allowed to touch the mic, Mahalia Jackson. But so think about that, where the order of things were more much.
I'm getting a call from actually Don Mizell. I wonder if he's watching.
Oh, go ahead, go ahead. I'll take you down. I'm gonna give you a quick moment to answer that. Kathleen Dean is talking to us about her new documentary called "Wade in the Water: Drowning in Racism: A History," a deep dive and a look into what it was like to gain beach access and beach rights here in Miami, Florida. Again, what the way we see South Beach depicted, knowing that just a few years ago, people of color, Black people, had to prove they could walk across the beach or drive across the beach. You had like a checkpoint for their passes, and you weren't allowed to go just on Miami Beach, what we know as South Beach, and hang out. Oh no, you had to show that you were a domestic. Domestics had to have, think about that, like not only ID cards, but it was just, again, like restricted movement cards, let's call it that, because that's really what it did. It allowed certain people access to Miami Beach and others that had to, again, get permission to cross that bridge. So there's a lot there, you guys. I'm enjoying the conversation. We're going to get into some more of the film and then talk some more about some other projects you have going on, my love. So do you get to modern day, like the drowning statistics when it comes to
Yeah.
Black people? Talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that for me.
So it's a really sad statistic. Children of African descent are drowning at 6 times the rate of Caucasian children, and it's really it's a sad situation. And it makes you wonder why, especially here in Florida, where we are surrounded by the water. We have the
Yes.
ocean, we have canals and lakes and rivers. Why swimming isn't incorporated?
Into like elementary school curriculum, like really.
Exactly. And
Mm.
our kids get it. Maybe in kindergarten they may get like 1 week of swim lessons, but they're not competent swimmers when they come out of that. So it's important to teach children to be competent swimmers so that they can swim a certain distance, tread water for a certain amount of time, And it's a life-saving skill. It is important for there are many jobs that you can't get if you don't know how to swim. So, there's an economic component to knowing how to swim.
There's so much there when I think about my little niece and her taking her swimming lessons with the lady, and it's so funny. She gets so much joy from the water that she connects fun and joy with the word auntie. So she calls her swim lesson, like say the lady's name is Sarah, Auntie Sarah. She's like Auntie Sarah. She's just gonna be 2. She's gonna turn 3 next year. So in her concept of what she must be an auntie too, thinking about the joys, especially when you introduce kids younger, if you have the luxury for it. So I agree with you, especially in a place like Florida where we have canals, lakes, rivers, beaches, every kind of water. We're a swamp. Florida was literally a swamp. So all the water is drained into these canals and sent out to sea. So we are literally surrounded by water flowing through our just only 6 feet above sea level land here that everybody wants to move to so much. So thinking about that and why it's not taught earlier. And I'm thinking about the Caribbean diaspora too. Shout out to everybody watching the Caribbean. It's
Yes.
scary to think like my mom's generation. None of them know how to swim. My dad tells stories about how he almost drowned a few times, and I'm not laughing. It's just crazy. Now we look back and we're like, "What? That could happen?" But it did. So thinking about all the people that grew up just surrounded by water, as you pointed out, many of the African diaspora, and no one had the I don't know if it's the luxury of or the desire to teach a child this is how you survive if you were to fall in this water.
Yeah.
Several people my mom grew up with drowned
Oh,
in buckets and rivers, as we would call them, like precipice, over the edge, a deep dive or a deep unseen edge, falling into a river and things like this. This was, I'm sure, uncommon in the American South as well. But yeah, it's really interesting that this is a plague that you said 6 times as likely. Children of the African diaspora are 6 times as likely to drown than their white counterparts.
mm.
So, how do you hope this film will impact that number?
Well, so I'm part of this organization called Diversity in Aquatics, and they have some scholars who have done research. And one of the Dr. Ayana, her dissertation was on how important it is to teach the mothers how to swim, because when
Mm.
the mothers know how to swim, they teach the children. So, that's just kind of like my mission is to encourage adults. If you do not know how to swim, it's never too late to
It's
learn.
never too late not to fear the water. Cause I know I'm talking about when I get my aunts and stuff to go in the pool, it's like a
Fear,
production.
fear is real for a lot of
They
people.
are afraid. They are
Some
truly
people
afraid.
think they can teach your children how to swim by throwing them in the water. All that does is add to the trauma.
Which
So
we do. We be like, boy, you better learn pow.
that is not the way to do it,
But
okay?
like you're gonna drown your own children. Like this is crazy.
It is.
But again, culturally, we have kind of had this conversion to swimming is not a black thing. Now, I hope I have not booked the date. I'm gonna say her name. Surfer, international surfer, a black woman named Neek Miller told me yes, she would come on my show,
Oh,
and she's breaking barriers when it comes to surfing and blackness and what black surfers are and are not and where they fit and do not. I cannot wait to have her on in December. But others I know as well, as I think about people who have stood atop podiums. I know for Jamaica, there's a swimmer named Aaliyah Atkinson and several others in the
yeah.
United States who are also kind of breaking barriers. But when I look again at our diaspora in terms of our physical make and body and prowess of strength and those things, swimming should be our sport, y'all. Like we should be just like how gymnastics has shown. Again, once you create an access point, people can afford to do it. We have the abilities that are unexplored, and I think swimming might be, maybe in 10 years we're looking at the U.S. swim team and they look completely different if we taught black people how to swim,
Yeah.
especially in like community programs and school-based programs. I think that's super important.
So, and speaking of swim team, so Dr. Miriam Lynch, she's the uh, CEO or executive director of Diversity in Aquatics. and she's a swim coach at Howard University. And she was telling me that there were 11 HBCUs that had swim teams.
Wow.
And of course, when money gets tight, the
The
swim
swimming.
programs are probably first or second to go. So
Oh,
right now, Howard is the only HBCU that has a swim program. She is on a mission. She and Diversity and Aquatics is on a mission to open up swim programs at the other 11 or 10 HBCUs. So in December, she's already achieved one to cross off the list,
yes.
and that's Morehouse. So Morehouse
Mm.
opening up their swim program in December.
Listen, I'm excited about that HBCU shift. I do think if it starts in those places, again, we start to see culturally when we see images online on Instagram. 40 Boom says, I'm glad I know how to swim. When we see this imagery, like it's okay. I figured out, like, I know there are different swim caps now, and people are where the hair was a whole big thing. I didn't even get into it. But it's like a whole mindset around our hair and chlorine. Like I just discovered I hadn't swam. It's obviously a long time in I was going to the beach at the beginning of COVID as like the one place you could get out the house and go. But I hadn't swum in a long time. On Labor Day, my cousin came down. We were at a hotel and just swimming. My cousins commented, they were like, look at this black girl joy. Look at look at you. I'm doing handstands. I'm Little Mermaid along the bottom. I'm doing this. And I was like, I just haven't felt that free in a long time. And it happened to be a saltwater pool. And then it
Nice.
was even a couple weeks later, my homegirl was like, you should come to my house and swim. And I was like, I have never, I didn't want to invite myself. I got a second saltwater pool. And she's like, Sue, you can swim. I'm like, yeah, but this is from literally maybe second grade, one lesson. I'm sure there could be a lot of improvement because sometimes I feel like I'm like, oh, okay, that head's above the water too
Join
long.
my swim club.
I should. I think I met these gentlemen, the gentleman from Diversity and Aquatics. Because I did MC a triathlon last December. And I
Right.
think I met a group of women, happened to be Black women who were running it. And I think they belonged to that group, the biking, the running, and the
Yeah,
swimming.
there's
And
Black girls who run. They come and they are part of the swim
the
program there.
yeah, so I was looking at it. I'm like, am I really gonna do this? But again, it would have to be a saltwater pool for me because it's better on your hair. It's less damaging. But that's another
Well,
story.
let me give you another little tip. Shea
Sure.
butter. Shea butter is the truth. I put shea butter in my hair and on my skin before I get into the pool.
Okay, tricks for the trade. Now I gotta try it because again, I don't like my stuff be dried out and breaking, so I need to make sure the tresses stay in place. Quincy says I can't swim, so I stay on land. Listen, you're not alone. A lot of people feel this way. Please follow Kathleen Dean, filmmaker and photographer and producer, and so many other things on her social media. She has a myriad of projects, but we're talking tonight about the specific project of her documentary, Wade in the Water, talking about the history of desegregation of Black beaches and pools in Miami. Wade in the water, drowning in racism. I think about this.
He needs to get in the water and learn how to
Yes, Quincy, you got to get in the water and stop this. I saw this question. Thank you, HB says, has the guest uncovered any data regarding differences in gender? That is, are boys, men more likely to learn to swim than girls or women? Do you have any information or did your data speak to this?
I do not, and I don't remember coming across any information about gender. Just that one study about, how important it is to teach, that the mothers, they concentrate on teaching the mothers how to swim.
I think it's super important, guys. Check out her documentary, and then where can they find the documentary, by the way?
Well, right now I'm still doing private screenings with the documentary and film festivals. So if anyone would like to arrange for a screening or have me come and speak to their organization, they can contact me. I'd be happy to do it.
Nice.
And once we finish the run, then it'll be available on one of the streaming services.
Big time, huh? Okay. But yes, you have to do the film festival circuit. So I hear and go through all the smaller, indie film stuff. And then I can't wait. Big time to get on the streaming service. But I'm here with Kathleen Dean. We're just talking about, I have a few more minutes. I'm going to drop the link, see if anybody wants to come up and ask you any questions. We're talking about Black people not knowing how to swim, the history of why. Yes. Let me see what the chat is saying. Just because I know how to swim doesn't mean I'm jumping in the water. Listen, I tell people all the time, I can swim. I can't save you. Like people get flustered, and they say, knock him out, knock him out to be able to save the person. I'm not that type of swimmer. I tell people all the time, my bones are dense. I don't float. I sink very easily. So
Oh,
floating on my back is great, but up and down treading, oh no, that's war. So don't depend on me. TTOO says we can't swim. I need my floaties. Yes, I see you, Antoine. Nice to have you. Antoine Christopher says, geez, what island did these people grow up from? Okay, offended. I'm from Trinidad. Swimming in the ocean was life. Hello. But
yeah.
listen, it's different when you come from country. If you're living in the mountains and you're on an island, the people from country don't know how to swim. The seaside people, I agree with you. People who grow up in Montego Bay, for example, in Jamaica, or go up in these almost to the ocean communities.
Mm.
Yes, many have that advantage. But your experience, Antoine says, uh, Trinidad, swimming in the ocean was life. Come home from school. I can't understand why some people don't like to go to the islands. I hear you, because again,
Who doesn't
this
like to go to the island?
yeah, I'm like, wait a minute, we do though, we do like, but some people are afraid. Like, I've gone on boat trips, etc., etc. It can be intimidating. Ace really says, I went back for lessons after high school. I was fearful as a child, and I kept feeling, oh, your lessons really taught myself how to swim. He's like, say, where my tube at? Listen, them floaties and them tubes cannot save you. You must know how to at least get to shore and grab onto something, and teach your children the same. Let me see. Miss AKA Lady says, it would be expensive really for schools to teach. I think if the schools already had a pool at the school, if they
Yeah.
had to drive away, I agree with you.
We find resources for what we want to find resources for. And, saving a child's life is definitely important. I think swimming should be something that we all know how to do.
Absolutely. Well said. You have to consider facility availability, training, liability, most local income areas. But we have swim teams, though. Would be
We have
my
swim
only.
teams, we have pools, we have public pools,
Yeah,
in
but I
cities.
hear you. But I think this is, again, it keeps it in the hands of the, I don't say well-to-do, but people who can afford it. Like, that's what really ends up happening. And people in the hood are not going to get the opportunity, or people who have lesser means, I should say, are not necessarily going to get the opportunity to learn how to save their own life. I think we can find ways. We must find ways, because it's going
You
to lead.
have to find ways.
Yes, yes. Punch the like button, says TTOO. No, Miss AKA Lady says, I learned it by being tossed in the deep end too. I have extra average skills because of that. No, that I saw many boys I saw get kind of
Austin,
baptized
yeah.
this way, and it was very Trump. Like, I didn't, and I was sad for them. I'm like, you're gonna kill him. So it was really uncomfortable watching. Aquatics is an excellent low impact exercise for seniors. That is very true as well. Exercise wise, after I did my 2 weeks, different days in the pools, I felt my arms, my neck, my chest. I was definitely very, very sore in a good way,
Yeah.
without putting a lot of impact on my joints. So water aerobics, especially if you're overweight, if you have other conditions, it is wonderful for you to be able to do it. Disabled and physically challenged people can get in the water and stand and do all kinds of stuff. It's a beautiful thing to watch. So yes, as a form of exercise, I know a lot of, when I was a member at LA Fitness and these places, they have they have water aerobics. I know for sure, and they have pools. So it's something that we can, and they're not deep, but you can drown in almost any amount of water, actually. Um, we in the water, from the pool parties to the boat parties, backflips off of the, if you can swim. I want, yay, RM, you love swimming. Hey, Ebony says, I was tossed in the ocean, but still can't swim.
Time to get lessons.
Yeah, we definitely need a swimming club. Hey, the world class. Good to have you here. I'm here with Cathleen Dean. Can't wait to see her documentary when it becomes widely released. Yes, let's talk about this hair thing. I see various comments about hair. This AKA Lady says, yes, getting your hair wet with chlorine isn't a small decision. I love somebody. It can take hours. I heard it even can stay on for days. To clean your hair after swimming, too much chemicals can damage your hair. It's tough. I saw this. Antoine said the same thing. The hair and water thing has to be a Western thing because people in the island swim, but you didn't have chemically necessarily treated hair and all things going on with that. So, did we talk about in the film this idea of hair and black women in their hair and the most policed part of
No,
our
but so
body? And
I'm thinking my film needs to be a series, and one episode needs to be dedicated to Black women and our hair.
hello.
I am happy to say that there are so many new like swim caps out on the market for people with locks or big hair that can fit under these caps. Soul Cap is one of them. So there's definitely options and
We don't
ways
have to be afraid. We don't
to
have to be
protect
afraid.
your styles. There's ways to protect your hair from the chlorine.
Ah, the chlorine going kill it. I don't really like it. I think about it all the time because if you chemically strain your hair ever, if you even have portions of highly heat treated hair and things like that, like adding chemicals, it'll almost be like a double chemical treatment. You wouldn't chemically straighten your hair and process it with a color. It will break. So I feel like it's the same kind of concept that we're afraid of that,
So what
okay.
you need to do too, and this is
Mm.
very important, and you should do this for your skin too. When you get out of a chlorine pool, you should rinse immediately. You shouldn't leave
Oh,
it
so
dry
wash your
for a
hair,
yeah,
wash your
rinse
body.
that chlorine off your skin, rinse it off your hair if it gets on your hair. But there are caps and there's bands that you can put around the
But
cap.
does the water get in your hair still? Because sometimes you use someone else's
No,
little girl, you some little white caps.
I've seen many women get out of the pool in my swim club with their hair bone dry. They have their caps on the right way, well protected, and
Okay, so if that's a
some reason
possibility,
I
I
always
might
end
be
up
able to
with
do a
wet hair.
triathlon.
Yeah, you should. You look like you're in really good shape. I'm sure.
Well, we're getting that praise be to God. I just, my trainer is helping me. Now I got a food regimen because I'm like, I'm not losing the weight I need to. So I need
And
to,
our hair should not be a barrier. Our hair
no,
has been
no,
colonized too, and
exactly.
we need to
Exactly.
decolonize our hair.
And what it can and can't do. And
Yes.
like you think about
Embrace
it.
the beautiful, natural, kinky, curly
Well,
hair.
I do think we're doing that, but I think
Good.
also black hair has preparation time. You understand? So even like how you have your beautiful curls and you probably could wet and go, everybody ain't blessed. So you're getting the now I have to twist it down. I have to make sure I have enough
Right.
time to
You
do
get
my
the right
two
cap.
strand. Yes. So
Get
okay, so you're gonna have to tell me the brand. Put it under the comments of the video. Let people know because that's a game changer. If there are caps, now, ladies, you might know what I'm talking about if you've ever been in the pool and that little white rubber band of a cap and the whole back of your head be wet and you come out the pool. I got spanked for that. Like, you're wet up your hair. And I'm like, this
Oh
cap is,
no. Parents,
we got thick,
don't do that to your
beautiful braids.
children.
You got the biggest kinky like French braids ever, and you want this little cap to sit on your no,
Kinky is
absolutely not.
beautiful.
So it's yeah. So I'm thinking to myself like, okay, guy, if they made new caps, swim caps, that's gonna keep you like you say bone dry.
Mhm.
That's a game changer. I could enjoy the water all the time
Yeah.
and actually swim daily or like weekly or whatever. But yeah, I think of the process. I think, okay, this has to now be wash day. So for us, African Americans, not necessarily washing our hair every single day, maybe more like once a week or every other week. It's a process to get back the curls, to get back the hair, to do what we needed to do because of the coils and kinks and waves and curls. So it is what it is. But you're right. We should not be letting that be a red herring is to stop us from enjoying water. There's something that is just such a part again of our cultural and historical what should I say way of relating to this earth. Like water and Africans were prior to a lot of this traumatic
We
seasons.
come from water.
Hello.
The first 9 months of our existence, we are in water. So it's
We
only
are
natural that we're going to seek it out and that children are going to seek it out.
exactly. So
We
I
are
think
water,
yeah, I
water.
was say 70% of our body. Yes, swimming is good for the joints. So I've dropped the link. Kathleen has about 10 or 15 more minutes, please, and we will wrap. But we're talking about her documentary. I want to get into some of our other projects as well. I think, your discovery of who these real people are. I think sometimes when we hear about segregation and desegregation, like everybody is almost like some kind of mythical, superhuman black girl magical and black man magical person. These are regular everyday people like me and you who had jobs, who had children, who had responsibilities, and decided that no, this society does not look like what we're supposed to look like. Ain't no way my daughter is supposed to be able to go to this pool and you have to go to that pool. Even today, I've had several incidences in maybe even the last year where people was acting up at pools, acting
Yeah.
like there were black kids that shouldn't have been there, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm talking about here locally in South Florida, but I'm sure around the country, there were, those things make news. Some people are just idiots, but I do think some of them have a deeper root as to why they are um, discriminatory in
And
terms of
they
why.
feel privileged, you know.
Yeah, like, why are you at my pool? Well, I live in this apartment. Oh, no, you don't. And like these whole things that escalate way too largely, and out of the fear, honestly, I think a lot of people have around folks who don't look like them being in their neighborhood, being in their apartment complex. Oh, you're not stealing? No, I live here. Like, I live here. So yeah, so not to digress too much, any main takeaways before I get into the Black film project and other projects you've been on, like the Merchants of Venice, and anything else you want me to mention? I was like looking at your website. You guys go to CathleenDean.com, Kathleen with a C, as you see on your screen. Check out all of her work, y'all. She's super, super talented woman in media. And I just love the layers to which you have kind of built your brand. And the 48-hour film project is a huge part of it. Check that out. When does that come around again?
That's usually a summer activity. So what we'll do is we'll have some meetups and workshops and help people get prepared. And that project is open to everybody. You could be a novice filmmaker or a professional filmmaker and still come and participate and have a great time with it.
I love that. I'm like, I'm not a filmmaker, but can I use my little phone and edit with my little tools?
Absolutely. We had winning films that were created on cell phones. So you could do
No
it.
way.
Every year we send 10 people to Cannes. It's a fun, crazy weekend, and it could just be that, or it could be more.
I love it. I love it. So you got to check her out, CathleenDean.com. Let me read some more of the comments. Last call for the panel if you want to come up and talk to Miss Kathleen Dean. Jamal Clark says, in Barbados as a kid, swimming was awesome. Love that water. I'm glad. Listen, Ebony says, I lived in Georgetown, Grand Cayman for 4 years. Went to 7 Miles Beach every weekend. Fantastic. Let me see. How are people living in the island that can't swim? This is very common. I'm telling you, when you
It
live
is.
away from water, when you
Yeah,
live in the mountainous regions and the interior regions of an island country, many people cannot swim. I
yeah,
promise you. Hmm.
definitely. Or if you just don't have that time for luxury, if you're
To
working.
make it from the hills down to the ocean, you have to have the means. You have to have a car. You have to have other things. If
But I
you're
am, Suzette, you asked me about what else I had going on, and I am
yes,
working on a new film. It's called Water is Our Medicine. So I've found my creative space right now where I'm playing as a storyteller. And Water is Our Medicine is a documentary film that explores five people who came together during the pandemic, and they started meeting online. But then when the beaches and the pools opened up again, they took their group to the beach, and there they found healing. They were dealing with depression, trauma, anxiety, all brought on by the social distancing and the pandemic, and they were able to use the water to heal.
I
So
love it.
Water is Our Medicine is my
So
next.
you all in, sis, when it comes to water. That is a theme right now.
I'm taking it too
Yes,
far.
in this season, I love it. No, I've had women's meetups out on the beach, and I had one called Let It Go,
Oh,
and it was the most. That's again God ordained, as I feel, experience to uplift and unburden people who we did it going into the new year. This is almost 2 years ago. I can't believe it's so much time. Right before the pandemic, it was really good though. That water is powerful. Being near the water is powerful.
isn't it? It just
Make
relaxes
you feel small, as Beyonce say. Remind you that the world still keeps going, even though you have this stress in your little corner of the world. That there's this huge ocean that is somehow, still going to, give us life, give us food. And sun still rises above it and sets below it. It's
you.
still gonna be there. Like it gives you this
It's,
sense of like
it's
life is
powerful,
happening.
and you have to respect it too.
Yeah, going on a cruise for me When I went on my first cruise, where I was like maybe a teenager and I could understand what was happening, it also humbled me. Just
Mhm.
being in that dark, I'm talking about when there's only starlight and
Mhm.
black ocean, you can't tell the horizon from the sea. I think about, again, I'm that historical kind of buff where I'm like, oh my gosh, think about the sailors that didn't have navigation and were out here. Think about the slave ships that were out here. Think about the current day migrants that are out here, our Haitian brothers and sisters, our Cuban brothers and sisters. When I think about the people who are in the open ocean, it always just kind of amazes me. No matter what the story is, now, and even if we do have navigation, the sea is its own beast. You got to be very careful and respectful of it, no matter who you are. I'm going to read a few more comments and then we're going to wrap up, y'all. I do have a show tomorrow. I'm going to have a show on Saturday. Bernard S. wants to talk about free speech and Kanye. I really think that is, again, I was probably going to talk about Kanye anyway. So thank you, Bernard S. We were on the same wavelength. What is happening? The cancellation of Kanye. I probably may even do a little bit of a part 1 tomorrow and then part 2 with Bernard on the free speech issue. I think I'm going to be hitting Mandrell up next Tuesday. Mandrell, I saw your message. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to respond yet. And then, guys, I have to take a family trip, emergency trip. Somebody in my family passed. I'll be in Jamaica next week. So I'll be at a funeral in a week. So I will probably do a live from down there, maybe definitely a Patreon only kind of deal. And then I'll set up, the rest of my interviews for November, but now I have to go be with family. So sad to say, but life happens. I just want to keep focused on where yes, girl, life, again, you have plans and then life, right? So we do our best to just do what we can, support our peoples, be there for people. So that's what I'm gonna have to do and want to do for my family in about a week time. So last comment, y'all. Yes, we want to hopefully promote swim lessons from the film. Need to take some sea swimming lessons like the Navy SEALs. Listen, pool swimming and sea swimming is two different animals.
Very different.
Pool feel good and the water behaves. Sea current, even I've gone in rivers in Jamaica, even during my family reunion. I was like, y'all, this is river water. It's moving water from the top of the mountains. This water is, just like Florida, water goes to the sea. So as it's going down the elevation, it has it has current underneath it. And I had cousins like, oh no, we don't need a life vest. I'm like, put on, the little boys. I'm like, put on, and they're swimmers. They swim for Jamaica. Like, put on your life vest. I know you can swim very well, but you're not gonna have your mom out here talking about we let you get in.
Yeah, always err on the side of safety, right?
I'm like, they can swim very well. They're competitive, but I'm like, absolutely not. Put on your vest and let's go. Yes, her new documentary will be out. It's doing the rounds on the film festivals. So
it's also, I know our audience is all over the country. Wade in the Water has been screening on PBS.
Oh, nice.
So I think there's a couple of stations still. Check your local PBS listing. You might catch it on PBS.
Fantastic. Before I ask you for your final thoughts and take homes, visit CathleenDean.com, y'all. Yes, Miss AKA Lady says, give hair tips. That there is so many times. Yes, I think this has to be again part 2. I wanted to go in the pool, but I didn't feel like dealing with hello. That's the thing. Black hair has to be prepared in a way that it looks presentable the following day, right? So there is the braid down and the let out, the twist and the let out. The beautiful curls have to be kind of like prepped. So it's not a wet and go. Everybody ain't got that texture. Mind you, love all textures, but I hear you. And I do have to get the information from Kathleen about these swim caps. Yes, chlorine pools. I realized the difference in my eye burning, my skin burning, versus when I'm in saltwater pools. I can literally in the hotel, the saltwater pool, I can see clear, like almost, I'm talking about without any goggles.
So I always wear goggles. Goggles are encouraged in my swim club. If you don't have goggles, they have a pair for you. So.
Okay, so just me. Okay,
wear your swim cap, wear your goggles, drink lots of water so that your skin doesn't absorb the chlorine. Be properly hydrated. Even though you're in the water and you're swimming, you're still sweating. So you want to make sure that you're properly hydrated.
Love that. Jamal said, I'm glad I'm a dude, so I don't need to worry about all this hair stuff.
Well, you got
Yes, God, that's Cathleen Dean. Our hair has been colonized. That is a very powerful statement. This is what I'm talking about. Miss AKA Lady School'em. Wash day was 4 hours minimum when I was loose natural hair. That's a ton of time. I agree. Because you
yeah.
got to shampoo, you got to condition, you got to pre-treat, you got to do this, you got to do that to make sure your curls are popping. That's what we want, right? We're in a society again. Natural hair is not even as embraced as we want it to be. So we sure enough not gonna come out the house with natural hair not being, prepped and so it looks its best. So yeah, again, it takes a lot of time. I've seen swim cats that are large enough for natural hair, including braids and locks.
I've seen them and I have one.
Oh yeah, I'm going. I see with your volume of hair, if it works for you, it can work for many of us. I love that. Yeah, listen, Antoine says a movie about Black women and hair. Good luck with that one. We all know how Chris Rock turned out. Let's be honest, Black women and discussing hair is taboo. It's something most aren't comfortable. It depends on who it's coming from. I would kind of agree with you, but it depends on who it's coming from and the intention. Yes, Jamal says, once I have a swimming trunks and boxers, baby, I'm swimming. I don't even have to bring a towel to the beach. I love that attitude. Check out Cathleen Dean, y'all. She's doing work with this new documentary. I can't wait till it comes out, wade in the water, drowning in racism. I see like even some of on your website, it talks about Africans diving for pearls in 1500 through 1750. Again, we are picking up our history in this kind of truncated way, this way of like shortening us to just this brief history in the United States. Absolutely not. So when I'm reading now on your website, looking at the tradition, the African tradition of pearl diving. Again, we've seen documentaries about it in the East, right? Okay, it makes sense. We think of Asia, South Asia. Okay, pearl diving. Okay, we're cool with that. But that Africans were doing it, no one is telling you that, y'all. Why? It's okay. We don't have to get in that deep, but we have to know that if it exists,
we're going to learn and we're going to share our history.
That's what I want.
We all have stories to tell.
Now you know. So even looking at the website now, her 48-hour film project, her photography, the history, you were at the Miami Film Festival, I saw.
Yes.
Tell us about what happened there.
Wade in the Water was an official selection for the Miami International Film Festival. It also debuted at the Roxbury International Film Festival, where it won first prize for Best Documentary Short. Where else? If it's screened at the Fort Lauderdale International Film Festival. And I was just in Georgia at the Morehouse Human Rights Film Festival.
So you're making it around. You're making it around the circuit. I love it. And when your film is featured at these film festivals, it's like a big deal, y'all. And that's how you get the buzz out to the major players. I try to tell the people the game, but that's how you get the buzz out and the support. Yes. Hey, Miss Globe Girl, good to see you. Over 70% of the earth is covered with water. Yes. This was me when I had my dreads. When I had my dreads, I felt this freedom, RM. I love it when it's drizzling outside and I don't have to panic and attack anybody to go to the mailbox. Listen, if you got that fresh blowout or that new perm or whatever you're doing with your hair, it feels like stress. A little bit of, and down here with us in the humidity.
Tell me about. I used to come down here from New York with my hair straight, and as soon as I got off the plane, it would look like this.
It is a wrap. Yeah. All these things that tend to, quote, stop us. We got to rethink it, y'all. We did a show about how to reverse or unthink the childhood limitations, the childhood traumas. Y'all didn't watch. Some of y'all didn't watch the show.
Suzette.
It was so good. Listen, I'm doing work over here on YouTube and I'm seeing the numbers for that show. I think I have to go back and rename it, but because Dr. Tasha did an amazing job. I don't know if you know her, but she's down here and she is a door-to-door therapist, a doctor of psychology. She also hosts live events. She's a very good host and very comical and just talking about everyday ways of coping with life and about relationships and things like that. She's really great. And we did a wonderful show just last Saturday about, what they told us, unlearning what they say about us and what we believe. And this is one of those things.
This is one of those things. We can learn when we were yelled at for getting our hair wet in the pool. We're adults now. We don't have to listen to that. And the fact that Black people don't swim, let's definitely unlearn that myth.
Yes, let's do it, y'all. Feel empowered by this film. Go to her website, please. And I love so much commentary. Yes, we're getting ready for the Olympics in the comments. Let's call. But I appreciate everybody who's rocking with us. I already dropped the link, Snuggles. Good to have you here. Thanks for being here, Lando. I see you. Yes, we're gonna do a Kanye show or two, guys. I'm sorry. I know it meant we got to talk about cancellation. We got to talk about free speech, mental health. We got to talk about it all because it's really that kind of all kind of wrapped into one with him. When you think you are bigger than, the powers that be, they remind you, and that's a part of it as well. Humbling him, and I think again, not to justify what he said at all, but we have Black violence in music all the time. We have misogynistic music all the time, but nobody ain't cancel over that. Nobody ain't cancel.
I'm gonna tune in for that show, Suzette.
Yeah, oh, we get into the the trenches over here on the Suzette Speak Show. But y'all, we are gonna wrap up. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the condolences. Yeah, I have to travel. It was kind of last minute. I was like, oh, am I not gonna go? Am I not gonna go? My peoples, my parents, my cousins, various family members. This was like one of our last patriarchs. So I'm like, we really should pay respects and as many people go as we can. Yes, I'm gonna try to get into the WhatsApp. You know where I didn't go? I need to go. Hellshire or Hellshire, as we say, beach for the
I've been
fried
there.
lobster. I did not get a fried lobster last summer. I'm
Yeah.
going to get my fried lobster festival. I don't care. We're going to the funeral, but the next day or the next day, I'm gonna need y'all to run me down. Thank you guys for the condolences. Yeah, family, first over everything. But y'all, keep us accountable when it comes to water and how we tell the story of Black people in water is super important. So again, think about how you are communicating this to your family, your kids, whoever you're around, whoever is your sphere of influence. When you say, don't get your hair wet, we remember these things. Don't do this, don't do that. There's so many things that stick with me. And I remember I was told little girls don't get their knees dirty. Like even to ride a bike was like they taught me how to ride a bike and then didn't want me to ride a bike. They don't want me to drop and get marks on my legs. And I'm like, but y'all are the one that told me how to ride a bike. Now I'm going to get punished because I was getting my knee. Like all these things kind of stay with you. So how we are.
But when we know better, we do better, right? So
how we approach our next generation, y'all, can make all of the difference. I want to thank and give her the last word. Kathleen, any final words on anything you want folks to remember about this documentary?
I want everybody to remember that the water brings joy, and I think we all need a little more joy in our lives. This was a joyful experience for me being here with you, Suzette. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
And I think everybody should connect with the water.
Let's go. I think we have a lot more. We're gonna save it for the actual film. I think sometimes you got to see it in pictures. And again, thank goodness that her lens through which she shot this was to be uplifting, inspiring, and encouraging, so that we are not looking at the water the same way we ought to, or that Black people have become accustomed to saying, oh, we ain't swimming, we ain't. And no, it's killing us, literally. Our kids. Again, drowning at 6 times the rates of our white counterparts is a problem. And so we have to do what we can to change the narrative. And this film will be a part of that, y'all. I can't wait. So I appreciate everybody watching. Hit the like button. Thank you again for all the well wishes. That's why I know it's about that time. Let me sip my water. If I enjoyed this one-on-one, Kathleen, you're welcome up anytime. When you get more projects going on, let's do it again.
All right,
it's a pleasure. Thank you, everybody. Hit the like button and check out Miss Cathleen Dean all over social media, and look out for her documentary. Check your local PBS station. It actually might be on there already. So shout out to everybody. Patreon, get ready. I have Brown Gal Peace Lounge coming up in November. Can't wait to have you on, sis. And if you want to support the content, ain't too proud, let's go. Cash App, Suzette Speaks. Thank y'all for the love. Thank you for watching. Have a great night. Bye now.
Good night.